and let people start coming on in. Hold on 1 second. Here we go. All right, so there's people coming in. We'll wait a couple of minutes. We'll wait for the number to kind of stabilize out, and then we'll jump in.
Sounds good.
All right, our number is kind of holding steady, so let's kind of jump in. So hey guys, I'm so glad to have you guys with us. Feel free to use the chat box or question and answers as we go through this. As I normally open up any of our webinars, I always say underwater basket weaving is down the hall. That is not this webinar. So if you're here for MACP, and I think we also opened it up to others, we want to welcome you. We're so excited. We have a wonderful speaker today. She's going to be going over some really great stuff. And I'm really excited that you guys kind of get what I would feel like a sneak peek into the future. This is one of our graduates, so we love her even more. This is Julianne Nayler. I have to say that right because y'all know I have a Southern accent. And she's a registered psychotherapist. She's a motivational speaker. She does event hosting. She does certified personal trainer. So pretty much she's doing everything. She has a really diverse background that she's going to share today, especially about women and mental health, abuse, addictions, and physical health. So that all of that has really led to her passion in seeing women holistically. So when we say holistically, the body, the mind, the spirit. And she really has a heart and desire to help women. And I love that she calls it beautiful, beautiful, valuable, and unique. I love that. So this is seeing who you are and understanding your purpose despite your past or your current circumstances, which could not be more meaningful as we are still going through a global pandemic. So what a relevant time to have her come and speak with us. So I'm going to just go right ahead and hand it on over. We're going to go through and she's going to speak with you guys, and then we're going to hold at the end some space for you to ask questions, make comments. So this is really just time of fellowship as us as a community. And then we'll wrap up with any final thoughts. So Julianne, I'm just, whenever you're ready, go ahead and jump on in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on the series. I'm super excited to be chatting about this. This is a topic that is very, important to me. This is something that I have really come to learn as useful in my journey of life, but also in my journey as a clinician and a psychotherapist. So this is something that I have trained and talked in my hospital with psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses, something that I've done in my own personal life, hosting. As you mentioned, so I run a side business called Her and Her Heart, and that is really empowering and creating safe spaces for women. We do kind of events around different topics to kind of evoke and encourage women to know how valuable, beautiful, and unique they are. So that's really where my passion lies. But the core foundation of that is understanding our purpose and the meaning behind that. And just the importance of authenticity. So knowing who you are in every season of life, and how much more beneficial during this time right now, how much more important is it for us to truly understand our purpose during this global pandemic. This is something that I had to kind of sit back, take a second and go through what I'm going to show you guys is the peer model that I learned in my second year of university doing my BA in psychology from a professor who is absolutely amazing. His name is Dr. Paul Wong. You can look him up. He taught me this model a long time ago and the students, and he made us practice it every single year. So we literally had to go through this model every year, every class. So this is something that I'm excited to share with you guys. So with that said, we'll get right into it. So we'll go to the next slide, and it says, and we'll flip one more. So spirituality, meaning, and purpose. While we go through this, I know I only have 30 minutes. I really want you to think, what role does that play in your own life? What role does purpose and meaning? Do you have a sense of purpose? Do you have a sense of meaning? Do you feel authentic in your day-to-day life? Or do you feel like you're constantly trying to grasp at something? There's a really great quote that I love, and it's by Gary Zukov, and it says, when the personality comes to fully serve the energy of its soul, that is authentic empowerment. And what he means by that is when your personality, all your characteristics, all your traits, when that truly collides and morphs with the passion of your soul, that's when we start to walk in authenticity. But sometimes that can be blocked by setbacks, suffering. It can be blocked by traumas. It can be blocked by situations. I mean, look at COVID. It set us back so that maybe the goals that we had in mind, now we can't do because there's these setbacks or these barriers. And sometimes that kind of tilts us off and we feel like we're not being authentic, or we feel like, the things that we had and the meaning that we had is lost. So moving on to the next, it just talks about authentication to purpose. So what we're talking about, and it's similar to what I said, is that moment of awakening in every season of your life to say, aha, I have that revelation and I know I need to make a change. I don't know what it is, but I know I need to do something in order to feel content and find meaning in what I'm going through, whatever it might be, trauma, grief, change, so on. So moving on to the next, just to give you guys a background, this is not all fluff and conversation. The role of meaning and purpose, they've done tons of studies that show that there's correlations between people who have the presence of meaning in life or search for the meaning in life, have a higher life satisfaction and happiness. It shows that among patients with mental health disorders or illnesses, they actually have a lower sense of meaning. It shows that studies have shown that search for meaning and presence of meaning is a resilient factor. And it shows correlation between meaning in life and suicidal. So they did a study with cancer patients, and they actually showed that cancer patients who focused on meaning in that season and time had less suicidal thoughts. Of course, there's also effectiveness of lower depression. It reduces job burnout, empty nest syndrome. And then for those that are married, there's a correlation with marital satisfaction. So moving on to the next slide, I'll go through these quick so that we can get to the meat of it. But right now we are in the state of world with COVID, but existential psychotherapy, whether you've learned about it or you will learn about it, humanistic studies while you're doing your MACP, basically existential psychotherapy, they talk about this like existential vacuum, which says that a lot of the time people are lost in finding authenticity and meaning. Suicides rates are higher when people don't have that sense of meaning. They experience more depression, anxiety, isolation, loneliness. And technology, we know, has a huge role in that. It isolates us a lot. And now during COVID, how much more, right? It also connects us, but then there's the consequences of isolating us. And what existential psychotherapists, their perspective is, they basically say that when we don't find that sense, when we're going through kind of an existential crisis, so when we feel like we don't have meaning and purpose, we have this kind of feeling of the grass is greener on the other side. So if I can get to the other side, I'll be happy. Or if I can do this, I'll be happy. But then there's this loss of sense of who we are and meaning in presently what we're going through. We're always striving for the next, but sometimes we get lost in knowing who we are in that season. So We'll flip through. So existential therapy, they talk about, four main things. They talk about freedom, associated responsibility, death, isolation, meaninglessness. We'll flip to the next slide because I just kind of talked about that. But the main stresses, and this is all to kind of give you a foundation of where we're going with this pure model that we're going to talk about. Existential psychotherapy, they stress that all people have the capacity for self-awareness, that each person has a unique identity that can be known only through relationship with others, and that people must continually recreate themselves because life's meaning changes constantly. And then anxiety is a part of the human condition. So when we find, so we can flip to the next, thank you. Sorry, I am not controlling these slides. Thank you. So how it can help. Individuals who respond to treatment tend to find meaning and purpose in life. So similar to what I just said, they have more self-understanding, self-respect, and self-motivation. So going just back in history, existential psychotherapy, on the next slide. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Viktor Frankl, but he was he developed what's called logotherapy. He was in the concentration camps a long time ago during the war. And he developed during that time logotherapy. And it was all based around finding meaning in moment by moment and day by day. And what he had really emphasized was that we can be in our own self-prison more than someone who's actually in physical prison. Meaning, when we feel lost, when we feel distraught, and we don't find meaning and purpose, we can create that own isolating jail. And so he was kind of one of those main founders that really started to talk about purpose and meaning. Then we go into Rollo May and Irvin Yalom, and these are all really big, heavy hitters in existential psychology. Moving forward, so now we're getting into Dr. Paul Wong. He really took that himself and other people to really focus on, okay, so yes, we can do therapy, we can concentrate, we can know that we can identify anxiety, we can identify, meaningless and loneliness, but let's take it one step further. And they talk positive existential positive psychology emphasizes on, let's not only concentrate, so whether it's for ourselves or our clients, let's not only pull out what are the anxieties, what is the loneliness, what is the meaningless, what is that person going through, but let's take it a step further. Let's figure out how we create meaning. How do we create purpose? How do we start to evoke so that we can see kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel, something to give us that resiliency to move forward and truly feel it, truly feel that we have meaning in any season of life. And that can be very difficult. And so they kind of emphasize truly on, we'll go to the next slide. It says key questions to PP, who am I? What defines me? I won't read all of these, but how can I be happy? Why am I bored? How do I make the right choices? Where do I belong? How do I develop deep and meaningful relationships and so on? So they really focus on this, okay, let's focus on the existential crises that we're going through, but now let's also find the creativity in that vulnerability to move forward and find meaning and purpose. And so Paul Wong, we'll go right to the pure model slide. Paul Wong developed what is called the pure model. And what this pure model is we have P for purpose, U for understanding, R for responsibility or responsible reaction, and then E for enjoyment evaluation. So we'll go through each one. I'll give you a brief synopsis of it. And then of course, I would love to hear any questions afterwards, after we go through it. So looking at purpose, basically I'll read it and we'll talk a little bit about it, but meaning comes from having a sense of higher purpose and calling. It is the mission and calling that gives life direction and significance. If you are not in touch with your life purpose, it's time to create a vision and mission statement to guide your decisions. This can be created by knowing your core values and priorities, as well as what you are passionate about and what you want to be remembered for when your life is over. Now that's a pretty big, statement, but you can bring it down a couple notches. So whether it's what is my purpose right now while I'm going through this program? Maybe I'm feeling really overwhelmed because it's COVID, life has changed. My mental health symptoms have been affected because maybe, work or kids or life. And I also got to do this program, whatever life tragedy we're going through. This purpose, it's sitting down and saying, okay, what are my core values? What do I love? What am I passionate about? What's my vision and mission for this time and season of my life? I had to do that personally when all COVID had happened, because I also trained on the side and I had owned a gym and running boot camps, and I was doing a few other things, my Her and Her Heart, my women's events. I had wanted to do, of course, another big event in person, and all of a sudden I couldn't do it. All of a sudden I wasn't allowed to do it. And so I felt this sense of, oh my gosh, can I continue on? How am I going to continue on? How will I continue to affect and impact women? And it kind of made me have to reevaluate, okay, what is my purpose in this season? Maybe it's time for me to learn a little bit about technology. Maybe I need to do an online webinar. Maybe I need to create workshops. Maybe this is a chance for me, to develop little things differently. And so I did. So purpose is really looking at what is my mission and vision during this time, whether small, and you can have a big one for your life. Moving on to understanding, so the you. This refers to understanding who you are and what really matters. John Maxwell said, you have to know yourself to grow yourself. If we don't know our life roles, how we influence others, what is expected of us in any given situation, it will be difficult to respond effectively and make decisions from our authentic self. When we have this understanding of ourselves, we will be more coherent and more easily able to navigate a difficult path. The greater our self-awareness, the more likely we will make decisions that align with our purpose and leave us feeling fulfilled. This understanding piece is probably one of the hardest things to navigate, whether with clients or with ourselves. Sometimes it really is difficult as seasons change or tragedies happen. What do I know about myself in this situation? What are my values? What are my priorities? How do I respond to decisions? What are my coping strategies? What has benefited me and what is bringing me back further? So this understanding piece sometimes can take a lot of time. This could include a lot of journaling, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of conversation and processing, but figuring out what is my understanding of the situation that's going on right now, and who am I in this situation? So not only finding your purpose, but understanding how do you respond to that purpose, and who you really are. What are your core values, strategies, coping strategies, and so on. Then we go to responsibility. So one of the most important traits for living deeply and fully is the belief that we are responsible for the decisions we make and response we have to every situation. When we assume responsibility for your own life and all of our actions, we will see our confidence grow and our ability to deal with setbacks and improve greatly. Taking responsibility fills us with meaning because we realize a moral duty and obligation that is tied to a bigger picture beyond ourselves. The way we live our life reflects and impacts many other people, so respect your inherent influence. Okay, so I am a big believer when people, let's take it back. When people tell me, well, things just happen for a reason, or, there must be a reason for this change. And I believe in that saying a little bit, but there's a part of me that kind of always reacts. And that part always reacts because I always say to myself, like, that may have happened, but we have the responsibility to shift it. So maybe it didn't happen to, maybe it happened in part to, boost my responsibility in the situation. But a lot of the time we just cope with what's going on and we keep it moving. But sometimes we lose the opportunity to really responsibly react in those situations. So during the season of your life, during whatever is going on, small or big, as I mentioned, what is your responsibility? You have the power when you understand who you are. What are your capabilities? What is your vision? What is your mission? You have the responsibility to react to that. And what that means is, what is my moral duty? What can I do? So I don't want to leave it to some external influence, but I want to know, what can I do to responsibly react to the situation? When we really understand that, we start to see the authority that we have kind of I always use the saying, everywhere we place our feet, we have authority. And so you start to realize this moral obligation to yourself and other people that everywhere I place my feet, I take authority in this situation, and only I have the responsibility to react and to find out what is that action that I need to take. And then we move on to the E, which is usually enjoyment. And I know Paul Wong, he later on, years later, he added evaluation. So what this enjoyment piece is learning to enjoy every minute of your life when things do not go well. This will require an appreciative attitude and ability to enjoy the little things. And as we do that, we follow purpose and live responsibly. When we do good for others, we will do good for ourselves. Everyone wants to believe and feel that their life has a meaning and purpose. And with this model, you can begin to live in a manner consistent with what really matters. I really like these 4 elements. This is Paul Wong talking, because they're a great reminder for how to live life when we are going through ups and downs. When things are going well, Pure reminds us to stay humble, live based on our values, and think beyond ourselves. When we're down in the dumps, Pure helps us take control of our situation by focusing on progress and taking a perspective of learning instead of blaming. Remember, there is something good in every day. Enjoy the pleasant things and recognize the duty you have to make the world a more loving place. With that said, when we look at Pure Model, of course, I am very aware, working with clients and even myself, it can be really difficult sometimes. It can be very difficult to sit back and say, okay, where do I find purpose? Where do I find meaning? But what we need to understand is that when we're able to find meaning, when we're able to cast a vision for that season of our lives, something starts to kind of fire up inside of us. We call it like those little big fires that start to spark in our soul that kind of meets, when we talked about at the beginning, our personality and our characteristics. So it's figuring out, how do I light those little fires again when I'm feeling out of control, when I'm feeling lost, when I'm feeling anxiety, when I feel like everything around me is stressing me out. How do I find purpose in that? And sometimes we don't want to, and sometimes we want to grovel, and sometimes we want to, and there's beauty in acknowledging our feelings. But Pure Model, really, what I love about it is it makes us honestly sit back and reflect and say, okay, what can I do in this situation, and how can I find purpose and meaning? And when that does kind of sit well with you, that authenticity comes through. So things might not be all great, but it helps us to walk and navigate authentically in that season of our lives. In this, my kind of passion and my heart's desire would be for each one of you to take this model and currently ask yourself and go through it. What is my purpose? What is my understanding? What is my responsibility? And then that enjoyment piece may come. And it may not come exactly how you think, but it's a great model to really propel us in a direction of authenticity. So I really encourage you guys, how does meaning and purpose play a role in your life, in your client's life? And how can you use the above in your practice? So think about kind of some of these questions. When for example, when I did in my undergrad, Paul Wong, his big project, it was great. My second year of university had said, I would like all of you guys to take a really tragic moment of your life that you would consider tragic or sad or heartbreaking. And I don't care how you show the class or what you're going to do. And he's like, you have a choice whether you want to show the class or just give it to me. But I want you to find the Pure Model in that. And I want you to then find meaning and explain it. And so long story short, I took a really bad heartbreak that I had and I made it into a scrapbook. And so in going through the Pure Model, I remember it was such a practical way for me to realize, wow, when I actually sit back and think about that situation, I was able to find purpose in that. I was able to find understanding, my responsibility. And once I was able to kind of put that in perspective, it helped. There was a piece of coping. There was a piece of healing. There was a piece of, now I can take this and I can move forward authentically in my life, knowing that, this is my purpose via this tragedy or what had happened or my heartbreak or whatever it might be. So there's really practical ways that you can do this. And just on this last slide, finishing here, I would ask how to create little and big fires of meaning and purpose for yourself and also for your clients. So what that means is I take the peer model and I actually do this with clients. I actually I help them navigate it. So maybe one session is just on the P, just on the vision, on the mission. Maybe it's 4 sessions on the understanding and really navigating. So you can take that practically and use it in therapy. Or for yourself, of course. You can do meaning projects, like I just mentioned, like a scrapbook or a video or a journal. A book, whatever it might be, a drawing, an art piece, you can use it like creating little big fires. You can do YouTube videos and discussion around the peer model. You can do a vision board, have meaningful questions and journaling. So these are just small little practical ways that you can create those little big fires for yourself. So kind of stimulate that thought process, but also for your clients as well. My encouragement to you, and I'll end on this piece and then pass it back over, is, in this season, in this moment of your life, while you're going through this program, or even just during COVID and everything that's going on, ask yourself, consciously sit back and say to yourself, what is my vision during this time? What is my understanding? What is my responsibility? And how can I enjoy this season of my life amidst all the stresses, amidst all the changes, how I'm feeling, what people are saying, whatever it might be, really taking the peer model and applying it. And we, of course, race through and we just gave you a quick little tidbit of each one. You can also look up the peer model, and there's tons of articles and more practical points for each like the P, the U, the R, the E. But I would really encourage you guys, sit back, do it yourselves, see how it feels, see how hard it is, navigate how difficult, like test it on yourself, because it can create a lot of great insight in helping you currently or in your future applying it and using it with clients. But my encouragement to you is, all of you guys, is you are valuable, beautiful, unique. You are unique. Nobody else can do what you can do. And so knowing who you are and knowing your authentic self in every season of your life and reevaluating every season of your life, I always say, this world needs you. This world needs the best version of you. And so no matter what's going on, there is meaning. It's just taking the moment to sit back and look at what that is for ourselves and understanding what that is and then responding accordingly. So I appreciate your guys' time. I'm going to pass it back for any questions or thoughts or comments, but really encourage you guys, search more on it. If you have any questions, of course, you can. I don't know if they're putting, well, my name is there anyways. You can find me on social media, things like that. I would love to connect with everybody and anybody. But I do appreciate your time, and I hope that this would be useful for you and of course for your clients or future clients.
All right, that was lovely. Thank you. Okay,
You're welcome.
So let's dive in here. So I'm going to ask you guys, if you have questions, please list it in the question and answer feature here. I'm also going to put the playlist link for our YouTube channel in the chat so everyone has it. So we're open for questions. I'm gonna piggyback a little bit off this, because as you're listening, I think of a conversation I just had with a colleague. This is maybe a few weeks ago. And I'm always interested in how each client, each person you said, kind of finds their own path to this, right? And it was the most well-organized path I had ever seen that he had taken, but he had very distinctive buckets of what was meaningful in his life. And then he went through each, he says, what do I want in those buckets? And he went through and listed. So even one of it was, who do I want to be in the world? Like, what does that mean to me? And it was characteristics. So here's characteristics that I strive for. And so then he had all of these buckets And he said,
Right.
all of these are a piece of who I want to be. Like my meaning and purpose comes from these buckets. So it's incredibly organized. And when you were saying
Absolutely.
this, I was like, yeah, each person has their own path to it.
Yeah, and it's very different. It's very different on how you navigate that for yourself, but how you see your clients navigate their core values and what they want to be and who they want to be, right? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, totally different.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question. How do you balance between the role of God, so a religious perspective, and my responsibility or action? So I'm guessing that would be like a free will piece.
So how do you balance between your responsibility of free will and feeling like something's determined for you? Is that
Yeah, Tanya asked this, and it sounds like it relates back to the R, so responsibility and external and then an internal. How do you balance that?
I think the reality is in terms of R, when we come to responsibility, what we need to realize, so whether you are a Christian or faith-based or have no sense of faith or whatever it might be, so if you believe in free will or no free will, I think what we need to emphasize is that what responsibility emphasizes is that no matter what is going on, we have the opportunity to respond to that. So nothing is going to force us to respond to that. So we can either ignore it and walk away. But I think it's understanding that things will continue to happen. So whether you believe that's, free will or not, but we were given the traits, we were given the qualities that we have, and when we discover that, then we are able to respond. But it's discovering and knowing like who we really are and what that looks like. So I think no matter what, we do have that responsibility. I'm not fully sure if I answered the question, but I think that there's a balance of understanding that things will naturally always, like, things just continue to happen, but we can find meaning in any situation, and we can have responsibility. So Viktor Frankl talked about, everybody in the camp, and they were all sitting there, and the two men and the woman had said, like, that's it, we can't deal with this, it's been years, like, we're gonna die, like, I just want to kill myself, I'm done, I can't do it. And he basically said, you guys can discover the responsibility of responding in the situation, even if it's just by thinking daily that maybe your loved ones are still out there, or maybe like you can take that responsibility and kill yourselves, but you have the responsibility on this world, and in this world, that there is more. So there's reason to live, there is responsibility to live, and how do we find that and figure that out? Or even if it's a smile a day, or find, if your meaning is smiling and it makes someone else smile, that's all you have for that day. And so I hope that answers it, but hopefully that kind of touches on it. I hope that's what I was gathering from the question.
Yeah. So we have a couple others coming in. I'll throw out, I put a book in the chat called Man's Search for Meaning. If you guys have not read this book, I encourage you to get it and then read it multiple times through your career, because the way existentialism is, the more you develop your own awareness, your response to the material changes as you developmentally grow.
Absolutely.
So great one to throw in there. Okay. Zoe, how do you work with clients who are resistant to this pure model mindset? For example, if they are addicted or very depressed, could you share a concrete example?
So I don't necessarily say, hey, we're doing the pure model with clients. I won't necessarily, every client is different, right? So I won't strategize it that way. I have clients, because I specifically work with addictions and mental health, and usually I'm usually working with clients that are in acute withdrawal or in the hospital or acute mental health symptoms. So of course I have to navigate differently when they're ready, but I guess there are clients that are more resigned, and are maybe not in the space to even look at responsibility. So there are some clients that I might not ever get to the R, so to speak, with them. It might be multiple sessions on just trying to pull through, is their meaning? What is their values? I might not focus on the bigger meaning and purpose words, but I might focus on, why don't you tell me a bit about your values? Is it making money? Is it your family? Is it your, health? Like you can start very small. So whether the client is resigned or not, it's really taking it a step back and saying, let's just navigate who you are, which is a lot of what we do in therapy, right? Is who are you? And that is going to look very different for every client. So for me, concrete examples with clients with addictions that I will do, first of all, I'm getting them healthy in the first place, right? So I'm educating them on withdrawal and addiction and things like that. But once I'm able to kind of get past that point, that's where I start navigating, how did you get to this point of addiction, and understanding them a bit more to also pull that out of them. So, I wouldn't say anybody's resistant to the pure model. I think it's how we present it, and how we kind of weave it through our therapy. So it's going to look very different for individuals. I won't even touch on the word meaning or purpose with some individuals because they can't even imagine that. They're just trying to survive day to day. Right. So it's really navigating who is your client and figuring out how to maybe navigate some of those questions, throughout your therapy sessions.
For those of you that are newer in the program or, beginning in the field, or maybe just kind of coming in, one thing that you have to always keep in mind with any type of model, and I think of this a little bit also like I do like reality therapy, right? The WDEP. Sometimes we see these models and we think, I'm going to do this in a session. And that
doesn't work.
This might be over 2 years. That we finally got to R. It is woven in. So you really meet your client. So everybody keep that in mind as she's talking and she's going through this. It's not I'm pushing you into this. It is a background, essentially framework that I'm living my sessions with you by.
Yeah.
So you spoke a little bit about that there's essentially not a resistance, but would you say that resiliency is a necessary factor in the client? Like, for example, would this match someone who has low resiliency?
Absolutely, because when I said the word resigned, it's, we look at clients who, are just have given up hope. They have no feeling of, maybe they've tried over and over and over again. So again, with addictions or other clients, they've tried life, so to speak, and they just feel like they're so down the dumps and things just keep coming their way and they're still sad or whatever might be going on. And the resilience factor is, our job as therapists is to pull out, like, you are still here. So there has to be some sort of resilience, whether it's low or high, there is a resilience there. And when it comes to the pure model, I think that is essentially what the pure model helps do is build up that resiliency, because it starts to highlight meaning and purpose for the individual. It starts to highlight, oh, wow, I am, great at making people laugh, or I'm great at, being a good mom, even though I have all these things going on, or, I'm great at this or that. And so when we start to highlight and navigate those things, that's where we do see, we might not see it or the client might not know it, but we're starting to highlight the resiliency. So this is a huge model. And this, I find for myself, it's been a huge way to help have resilience to navigate the seasons of my life.
Mm-hmm. So we have a question around, how do you build a vision or mission statement, or resources around building that?
That's a great question. I think for myself, or if I was to do it with clients, I think a vision or a mission statement, one, you can just Google, like, what is the mission statement of this company? And you'll kind of see, like, we believe in X, Y, and Z, and these are our core values. And I think developing or building that comes with starting to break down, maybe it's getting a value list and looking at, a whole list of values and circling the values that you really feel, speak to your heart. And from there, pulling those out and then saying, okay, what are my top 3 values, creating that. So once we start to navigate I think our priorities and our values, that can help us to kind of pull in and start to say, okay, I, Julianne, believe in a life of, X, Y, and Z. and this is what I want in this season, or in this season of my life, I want to make these things my top priority. So it'll look different for everybody, of course, but I think the start of that is maybe navigating what are my values and morals. What are the top kind of priorities? There might be 10 or 20 of them, but what are my top ones? And from there, weaving that into kind of like a mission statement. So I, Julianne, want X, Y, and Z, or this is where I find purpose, or in this season of my life, you know, this is what I want my purpose to be. This is how I want people to see me, you know, practically kind of statements like that, making statements and affirmations like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a question around how do I apply this model for people who do not have any connection to faith? So is there a requirement for almost like a spiritual connection here?
Absolutely. Well, one, we got to look at this in general. Faith and religion is a separate thing. It's part of spirituality, but spirituality, that word I know is very like taboo for so many people, but that can look very different for everybody, right? So it doesn't have to be tied to faith. Finding purpose in any situation doesn't have to be tied to faith at all. It really is just understanding and have a sense of who we are. So even if the person doesn't believe in faith or doesn't have a bigger picture of life, Pure Model can be used just literally day by day. Like, what is my purpose today? What is my understanding of who I am today going into work? You know, how do I want this day to go? And finding that sense of, you know, what do I want to bring in this time and meaning? So it doesn't have to be connected to faith. But of course, if you have clients or you yourself have faith and that sense of spirituality, I think it can highlight a lot more, right? It can open up maybe a little bit more, but definitely doesn't have to be tied to faith.
So the question is, given the growing awareness around race, how do you use the model to help people from different racial backgrounds to process experiences that they're only now starting to acknowledge or to assimilate?
Can you read that one more time? How can we read that one more time?
It's a piece of it is, how do you use it? So the first part of the question is, how would you use it with clients of different racial backgrounds to process what's happening, especially now that some people are just kind of starting to have awareness of discrimination?
That is a very big question. And I think it's a very important question because we all need to navigate this important time and this important wave and highlight of racial discrimination and Black Lives Matter and so on. And I think that Pure Model actually would be a great strategy to navigate that, because I think I would look at it as, okay, Julianne, you can break it down. What are my values? What are my beliefs? What are my biases? What are my vulnerabilities when it comes to, you know, racial discrimination, when it comes to Black Lives Matter? You know, I had to re-navigate my own biases during this time. I think it pushed everybody, it put that magnifying glass on everybody. You can absolutely use the Pure Model to help navigate, you know, where do I sit in terms of this big discussion that's going on? And I need to understand myself in order to take appropriate action, whether being an ally or am I being performative and so on. So I think the Pure Model, again, can absolutely be used during this time by saying to ourselves, okay, what is my purpose in this, you know, racial discrimination, what's going on right now? What is my purpose in it? What is my understanding? What is my reaction? And how can I walk authentically during this time, even if I don't know all the answers or I don't know what to do? I think Pure Model actually is a great way to sit back and sit down and you know, turn the mirror on ourselves and say, okay, what do I really believe and understand and know about what's going on right now?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have a question about the understanding of self. So some self-awareness here. For some, it takes years to understand this and it takes years to experience it. And then others, it happens very early. So the question is it just maturity or experience, or what exactly can you get to the actual understanding of self to kind of speed up the process?
Well, I think it's absolutely like different for everybody, but you know, I think it's both. I think it's maturity. I think it's experience. I love Brene Brown. If you guys don't know her, you should look her up. She's amazing, and she talks about, you know, when we are able to be vulnerable with ourselves and we are able to dig deep, that is a space of creativity. That's where creativity is born. And creativity being, you know, who am I? What do I love? You know, what is my authentic self? I think that there's no end result of getting to know yourself. So that might look smaller or bigger for different people. I think that your emotional intelligence plays a factor. I think, you know, as a teen, you're not going to have this grandiose perspective of who you are. And I think it shifts. And that's the whole point, is seasons change, and who I thought maybe a week ago was very different, or maybe a couple months ago before the pandemic was very different, you know, than what I realize now. So I think that experience and maturity for sure are both factors, but I think it's an ongoing, continual growth.
Mm-hmm. I'll piggyback off of that a little bit, that there's a lot of times where we're always kind of bogged down and we're going and going and going, that we're not actually spending time trying to understand who we are. We're surviving, we're going with the flow, we're in a routine, or we're just so focused on the external day-to-day pieces of our world that if you're not spending time, it's like an assignment. The more time you spend on it, the faster it gets done. The less time you spend on it, it's still going to be there waiting for you. It's essentially that.
It'll follow you around. It'll follow you around for your whole life until we're able to kind of sit and navigate with, you know, certain situations or emotions, but it's hard work, guys. So I say this to say, like, it's not easy. Like, it's hard work saying, oh, I gotta do this again. I gotta like sit with myself again. And how do I feel again? Like, it's hard work, but this is what we have to remember. There comes so much more enjoyment and fulfillment when we continually, you know, sit with ourselves and get to know ourselves. Like, there's so much fulfillment that comes from that, because we do gain a bigger perspective of meaning and life and purpose and authenticity.
Yeah. So we have a question. Do you think it would work with older populations, perhaps retired, and they see little purpose anymore?
Huge. So I don't want to like out my parents, but they're not old. They just retired early. But I weave this conversation in all the time with my mom and my dad. Like, they don't know that I'm weaving the questions in, but I'm like, so what do you guys love doing? And, you know, don't you guys love retirement, or do you guys not like retirement? And, you know, like, do you guys find yourselves bored? Like, you know, those key questions that I put up earlier, like all those questions that, you know, like, do you feel bored? Do you feel like you enjoy? Do you feel like you're connecting with people? Like, I navigate those questions with them. And I think it's a perfect way to, kind of steward like that feeling of, okay, what am I doing day to day? I'm going to say 30 to 40% of clients that I see during this time right now is actually geriatric. It's clients who are in retirement, drinking a lot because they're absolutely bored. They have nothing else to do, or using. And this is something I absolutely weave through and have conversations with them about, because they don't have they had so much meaning and purpose because their whole life was work. And now all of a sudden they're like, I don't have any meaning because, you know, I'm just at home or my family's far away. So this is absolutely something that you can use with clients that are, or like our older population. I would say especially them right now, when maybe their generational perspective and view was work is life, like work is everything and that's all you do, right? Like, I definitely think you can use it with them.
Mm-hmm. Can you clarify on using the term season of life?
Clarify the term of it. I think season of life being right now, say for example, like I had a season of life. So I think just like a chunk of a chapter, you can say a chapter of your life where I had no choice but to work the 2 part-time jobs to pay off my master's and do my master's at the same time, had to write my papers on overnight shifts, had to run to the next job. Like, there was no option. So my reaction in that season of life, like, I had to understand, what is my meaning? Oh yeah, I want to graduate. I have to make money. I want to pay this off. So these are the things that I need to do. There isn't an option, but I can certainly find meaning in this season of my life to help me navigate it. So seasons of life, meaning different chapters and waves of life, you know, maybe to like COVID is potentially a really big chapter and season for people because it really affected their mental health, or it changed how their day-to-day, you know, or their goals or their jobs, or they've lost their job. So now they're left saying, what do I do now? So seasons meaning chapters of our life, however you want to term it.
Mm-hmm. So one of the questions is about, do you have one unique purpose just in your life, or is that kind of changing as we go?
You guys are asking some great questions. I personally believe that we all absolutely have a unique person. So, you know, there might be two basketball players, but how those two basketball players bring it is completely unique and different. And so do we have a bigger life purpose? I think so. But I don't know all the answers. I might not know what that big unique purpose is. So I do think that in the waves or our times of our life or seasons of our life, that purpose, like there's small little purposes, but I think that they all kind of are the foundation to that bigger vision of our life. So whether that is, hey, I want to graduate and I want to work and I want to have a family, or I want to impact people, I want to, you know, leave a legacy of speaking and empowering, you know, that might look different every season of my life. So the purpose might, like the path might look different. So I wouldn't use the word purpose, but the path might look different. But I believe there's one overarching purpose. I think that's the beauty of life, is discovering what that is as we navigate.
What would you, and this is in the context of trauma clients that need to essentially reevaluate their world, their value system after trauma, post-trauma, what would be a practical task to help clients to think about their purpose?
I'm definitely not, I mean, I work with a lot of clients that have trauma. I don't want to say I'm very well versed in trauma therapy specifically. So I do think that you would have to navigate and get to a place where the individual, you know, is past maybe the acute parts of the trauma, like experiencing symptoms, and helping them narrate, I want to be cautious with what I say with that, because I do think that, you know, you can still find a sense of meaning in the trauma that has happened, like that the client themselves. But I think that might take a very long time. So even if the meaning is, now I have a deeper sense of resiliency, or now I'm moving forward. But I do think that, you know, that would have to be navigated with caution and experience. I wouldn't just throw that on any client with trauma, you know, for a long period of time, because you have to narrate and go through that whole experience of what even happened, right? And that takes quite some time for individuals. So you can absolutely use the peer model, but again, like I was saying, guys, it's not diagnostic. It's not like this is the 1, 2, 3, 4 step. It's more, how do we weave that in the conversation? And that might look very different for every client.
Yeah. I'll add in here, as a traumatologist, I can say that we absolutely talk about meaning. We absolutely talk about it. It's in the 4th phase of most trauma models, the 3rd or 4th phase, where we talk about reconnection. And that's reconnection to who you are in this world. That's reconnection to others. And a big piece of that is meaning and a sense of purpose around that. Because if you look at some of Dr. Grant's work, he talks about that trauma puts you outside of the normal belief system that we had about the world. And then afterwards, what we hope for, a hope, is that we have what's called post-traumatic growth. And that is growth around understanding who we are, and now how that relates to we move forward in our sense of meaning and purpose in the world. So
well said.
That one. Can you speak to how the Yorkville degree has influenced your professional experience?
Doing the Yorkville degree, it was great because while I was doing it, I was working 2 part-time jobs. So as I'm navigating through classes, I was learning more and more and more how to apply different things and different perspectives. It's definitely affected my professional growth, because I was learning, I was diving deeper into theories and philosophies and therapies, but also even more, I connected with so many people during the program who were in all variety of, they were in different positions. And I still have a connection with maybe 5 or 6 people, 10, who I did the program almost 8 years ago, who I'm still in connection with now. And we're able to still debrief about, certain clients or things that are going on, or how can we practically use, different things. So it influenced me huge, because it gave me another step to move forward in my career, having that degree, but also connecting me with the individuals and the profs and learning a lot. I learned a lot in that program, things that I still use and carry now.
Okay. How would you manage when you get hit? So using this model with someone who gets hit with a disability, and how that essentially reshapes your sense of who you are.
Same way as how we discuss, right? Like tomorrow there could be, God forbid, a huge tragedy in my life, or the loss of a loved one, or like you said, a disability or something that's going on. That individual, it might be maybe harder to navigate, but you look at, there's individuals all around the world, like I forget his name, the bionic man, he has no legs, and that came after he walked, for years and lost his legs, and he found meaning in speaking and empowering, and through that. So for him, there had to have been some sense of discovering who he is and what is the meaning, even though this is such a tragedy for me. So I think exactly how we kind of went through this is perfect. That's what's so great about it. You can apply it to everybody and anybody. It's just how we apply it, but you can helping to find meaning in any situation is going to help navigate, for anybody, for any situation.
Yeah. I'll add, so that's interesting, because if you even think about the idea of finding meaning, how perfect of a population of someone who says, now I have to rethink who I am. Now I have to rethink how I do my life, so that's what a great fit of using some of this and integrating it in, so there could be exploration.
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. What are some examples of ways that we can learn about who we are and our values? I'd like to rope this in maybe to, could you speak more to what, when you did the very last slide around like vision boards? I mean, some people might not be really familiar with these types of tasks.
Yeah. So, practically so for example, the vision board, you can have different vision boards for different parts of your life. It doesn't have to be one overarching vision board, but for example, you grab a board, you grab a whole bunch of magazines or pictures or things, and, you cut out what speaks to you. So for example, it could be, like a picture of, I don't know, like one on my vision board was like a picture of a woman, and she's all dressed up, in this suit, and she's sitting kind of, it looks like a traveling chair. Another one is a nice kind of like desk space area, and there's, I have like flowers and things like that. And that speaks to, like I wanted to have a space of work and time to read and do things like that. So a vision board is really just taking things that you potentially would want to have vision or see in your life. So whether they've happened or you want them to happen, and kind of like sticking them on your board, and just kind of almost like claiming things for your year or that time of your life. So vision board looks different for everybody. It could be like putting a baby, like you want to have a baby, or it could be money, or it could be graduating, or getting a certain job. It could be just the word peace, because that's something you're striving towards. So whatever that vision board looks like is different for everybody. So practically grabbing magazines or words, going on the computer, searching things, printing them off, and putting it on one kind of board for yourself as a vision board. When I talked practically, I said, like, look up YouTube, maybe TED Talks, and something that's motivational or inspiring, or, those individuals that maybe are now doing kind of motivational talks. And then after you listen to it, kind of write down, what are your own thoughts? What's evoked in you? Like, these are all practical ways that you can start to kind of nudge at, what am I feeling? What can I do? And get motivated to discover. just journaling, as we know, or like, art therapy, just painting and seeing what comes out of you and then writing the emotions after, different things like that can kind of help practically start to evoke what are some of those values, or what are some of the things that you really get excited about or passionate about.
Yeah. So we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much, Julianne. It was wonderful. So we will post this, kind of like I said earlier, we'll post this on our university YouTube channel, and it is going to be on the playlist MACP Inspiration and Insight series. So you're welcome to go back there. Thank everybody for coming. I appreciate you guys sticking around and asking great questions and really being a part of this. We have these webinars once a month, so feel free to join us in the future. Otherwise, you guys have a great day and stay safe out there.
Thanks, everybody.